Hi friends, it's Chari. Today I have a fun card for you using the new Altenew Stamp Wheel 2.0. This thing is bigger than the last stamp wheel and I'm going to have to zoom out my camera to show it to you. So what I thought I would share with you is how I created kind of a centering jig for my stamp wheel, I guess. Actually, I just kind of marked it off. The new Stamp Wheel 2.0 has a side that comes off so you can have stamps that go outside of that square platform, but I'm not going to be using that today, so I'm going to pop that back in. And this platform is 9 inches square, so I'm going to pull out my ruler and measure that. It's 9 inches. Now this ruler has a centering ruler on it as well, so I'm going to use that to make myself a little marking on that platform for an A2 size card. So I'm going to center up that ruler. Each side will end up at 4.5 inches from the center. And then I have a piece of cardstock cut to 4.25 by 5.5, and I'm using a purple piece just so you can see it better in the video. So I'm going to lay this in there and I'm centering it up left to right now. So each side of the cardstock will end up being at 2 1/8 from the center. And then I'll remove my ruler and very carefully add some washi tape on the left and right sides, right on the outside edge of the cardstock. So I'm being very careful not to bump that cardstock and move it, and I'm going to mark the right side with a piece of tape. And I'm going to mark the left side with a piece of tape. Now I am using the pink gingham washi tape because it is really brightly colored. And I know I'm going to be able to see this tape through the grip mat once it's inside the stamp wheel platform. Now I'm turning it just to make it a little easier. I'm still going left to right here. I'm going to center up my ruler just as I did before, making sure that is at the 4.5 inch mark on each side. Then I can take my cardstock and shift it left to right again. This will be the top and the bottom of the card, and each side will end up at 2 3/4 on that centering ruler. Then I can remove my ruler, take my tape, and do the same thing I did for the sides, and add a piece of tape right across the edges, making sure to not bump that cardstock, and I'm just marking that outside edge. So once I have this rectangle marked off, I can pull my cardstock out of there. I'm actually going to take my scissors and trim this up so that I don't have these extra pieces sticking out. This is not something you need to do, but I thought I would just clean it up so it wasn't too messy during my video today. You could also probably take a piece of 9 by 9 scrapbook paper and mark this off and drop this down in the hole as well. And you could have different size cards if you needed, but I usually always use an A2 size card. So now when I put my grip mat in here, I can really see that pink tape through that clear grip mat, and I know exactly where the center is. I can line up that card base and I can see that it is right in the center of the wheel. Now to get on to the card that I'm making today, I'm starting out with a piece of Yeti pattern paper from the Spiffier Speckles collection. This is that white paper with that gold foil speckles on it. I've cut it to 4.25 by 5.5, and now that I have my markings on my stamp wheel, I can line this up so I know it is in the center. I'm going to do some radial stamping in rainbow colors around my card today. I'm pulling out 8 inks because there are 16 points on the stamp wheel. I have wild rose, lobster, fake tan, sunflower, freshly cut grass, merman, forget-me-not, and grape soda. And I'm going to set these up here in the order 1 through 8. I know you can't see them because they're off screen, but we'll talk through this as I go. So what I'm doing is I'm stamping the bamboo in a radial pattern centered in the card. So I'm taking the tall bamboo from I Heart Pandas, and that's the one I'm going to start with. And I'm going to start by stamping one directly up and down vertical at the top of my card base. So I currently have my stamping platform with the stamping side facing up towards me, and I'm just lining up this bamboo with those etched lines on that wheel so that I know it's straight up and down. Now this wheel has a hole on one of these little points, and that is my starting point. So that's my number 1. And you can see I actually took a Sharpie and wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8 on every other little point. And this is going to help me turn. So I'm actually going to start with the yellow, which is my 4th color. and it's going to be down there. So if my 4 is straight up at the top, I know I'm in my 4th position. And the reason I'm starting with the yellow is because it is my lightest color. So that's why I'm starting with the yellow, and then I'll work my way around to that really dark red. So I'm starting with the yellow, I'm inking it up with sunflower ink. Then I'm going to take the wheel and flip it over and make sure that number 4 that I wrote is in that top position, and just pop this into those 4 corners and stamp that bamboo down. Now I can move on to the next color and just work my way around. And this is also why I keep my colors in the order that I want them to go up off the top of my screen. I'm sorry you can't see them, but the stamp wheel is big and takes up my whole screen. So now I've inked it up with freshly cut grass. I know this is my 5th color. I'm going to move this around so 5 is at the top and stamp that down. Now I'm going to speed up the video as I go through all my other colors so that I have 8 bamboos all the way around. So the next color is Merman, which is that tealy blue color. Then I'm using Forget Me Not, which is a purpley blue color, or a more true blue color. And then I'm moving on to Grape Soda, which is purple. So this is my last color, so my 8 is at the top, and now I'm back around to 1, which is my Wild Rose, which is a pink color. Now I'm actually going to skip my 2nd color and move on to color number 3, which is Fake Tan, and stamp that down, making sure the 3 is at the top. And the reason I did this is because that lobster ink kind of stains my stamp just a little bit, enough to where the next color picked it up, and I just didn't want to have to use a stamp cleaner in between my colors. So I made that one last, and I cleaned off my stamp, and now I'm moving on to the shorter bamboo in the I Heart Pandas set. Now there are 2 ways I could set up this other stamp on here. I could put it facing the in-between points that I didn't number, but in this case I wanted to keep my numbers at the top, so I just angled it on the plate. So I'm starting again with the yellow, and that is number 4, so number 4 is straight up, and I know this is in the right place. You can see it is one kind of tick off from the original yellow that we stamped there. And so I know that when my numbers are straight up and down, these are going to be in the perfect placement. So I'm moving on to the green, which is freshly cut grass. I'm going to make sure that 5 is straight up, and you can see I have that angled perfectly. You could also make like a 5.5 if you wanted to, just whatever is easiest for you to know where the placement should be. Now I'm moving on to Merman, then I have Forget Me Not for the blue. And because I have this perfectly centered, I'm getting this perfect radial design, which I think is so cool. Then I have number 8, and now I'm back to number 1. So that's where that little hole in the stamp wheel is. I did actually write a 1 up there too, so I didn't get confused. And then next I stamped the red. I actually forgot to skip the red and come back to it, so I did have to make sure that my stamp was nice and cleaned off so that the red did not transfer onto my orange and make it too dark. So I cleaned that off with my stamp cleaner so I didn't have any red bleed into the orange. And then I will stamp with the fake tan and finish this beautiful radial design of bamboo. So how pretty is that? I just think that's so cool that you can stamp it around in a perfect circle. Now I wanted to add some shading on the outside, and you can leave it on your grip mat like I'm doing here, but I wanted to be able to kind of turn it a little easier, so I pulled out my glass mat, and I'm using these small Altenew brushes to blend all my colors. I have one brush for every color family, so a red, an orange, a yellow, a green, and I'm just working my way around using the stamping that I did earlier as a guide for where those colors should fall. And I just think this added some really fun detail to the outside edge and kind of defined that edge even better. And I'm cleaning off that extra ink because I don't want to contaminate anything or mix any colors too much. I don't want my yellow mixing with my purple. That would just give us an ugly brown that we really don't want. So once I had this all shaded, I did feel like the corners were a little empty where I have all this beautiful stamping. I'm just popping this back in here. I'm not actually going to use the wheel for my stamping, but you could if you wanted to. But I thought I would add some of the other images in the set. So there is this cute little butterfly. I'm going to stamp that around in 4 corners. And I'm also going to add the little heart. And I'm just stamping these in the same colors that they are close to. So I use that grape soda, then the lobster. I am going to stamp off this green a couple times and make sure that that lobster ink is off there and it's stamping that true green color. And then I will stamp a 4th one in merman down here in the bottom. And using the block like this, I can kind of move the image around and tuck it in the bamboo as I want to. I'm also grabbing that large open heart from the stamp set, and I will stamp a few of those around as well, just to kind of fill in some of those empty spaces. And now my background is all finished. I really love the way this turned out. Now for the main part of my card, the focal point, I'm using the Doily Hearts die cut from black cardstock. And I also have the More Magic Messages for my sentiment. Now I use the coordinating circle die from More Magic Messages to cut a piece of the Yeti paper with that gold foil speckle. And I'm stamping the sentiment that says just a little note. Sorry about my head there. I was making sure it was nice and lined up. Now I'm stamping this in some Versamark ink because I am stamping on that paper with the foil, so I want to make sure that ink sticks to everything. And I'm just very carefully grabbing some rainbow colors that match the inks that I used, and I'm coloring in those open letters of the word just and the word note. Luckily, there is exactly 8 colors that I used, and there's 8 letters I need to fill in, so it worked out perfectly. I also colored in those little hearts there with a pink color, and then you're going to see me at the very end grab a very pale, cool gray and color in the little airplane just so it looks a little different than the background. And just that is so cute. I love the way it turned out. It's really going to pop on this black doily. And that black doily is going to nicely separate this sentiment from that colorful background as well. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this onto that doily. You can see that I'm using my grid mat to make sure that I have a heart at the top and the bottom so it's nice and straight. And then I can glue my sentiment on there straight as well. Now I can go ahead and put that beautiful background that I stamped and inked onto a card base, and we are ready to start assembling our card. But first I do need to stamp out some images. You can see some stamps up there in the corner. I'm actually just going to use the stamp wheel to stamp them down, just like a stamping platform, because I do know I'm going to stamp these twice. I am stamping them in jet black ink so I can do some Copic coloring, but because those pandas have those big solid spaces, I really like to stamp them twice so they're nice and dark black. So I will ink this up a second time, and because I use the stamp wheel stamping platform, I can stamp them right in the same place again. So now I need to color the bamboo and the pandas, and this is some really easy coloring. I'm basically drawing a line down the left side and the bottom of each of the little sections of the bamboo, and then I went down the whole thing with a lighter color, and that just gives it some nice shading. Then for the leaves, I like to use an even darker green so that they look different than the stalk of the bamboo. Now, of course, for our pandas, they are black and white, but I always like to add a little bit of gray to the white of a character just so it looks different than the background, or it stands out a little bit and it gets some shading. So they're super cute just as they are, but I'm grabbing a W1 and adding a little shading around their face and their bodies, and you can always use the coordinating coloring stencils to do this as well. And then I'm blending out with that W00. And of course, we can't forget some pink cheeks on our little pandas, which I just think makes them so cute. So I have an R12, and I'm just adding a little dot of pink right below the black circles around their eyes. And then I'll use the coordinating dies to cut out my 2 cute little pandas and my bamboo stalks. Now I want to add my doily with my sentiment right in the center, but I want to pop this up a little bit off that background. So I am going to add some foam squares all around all these hearts and the center. And I am using some black foam squares, but white ones will work too. I just happen to have these to use up in my stash. And you can see I put one little square behind each heart, and I have some in the center as well. And then I can just line this up in the center of all my beautiful rainbow bamboos, and it will cover up the center where they all kind of meet together. So if these overlapped and they looked a little bit messy, this would totally get covered up. And I can use the hearts as a guide to line up with the top and the bottom bamboos as well as the left and the right. And I know I'm exactly in the center. Now I can add my cute little pandas and the bamboos that I stamped and cut out earlier. And I'm just kind of moving them around to make sure my placement is good. I'm adding the two bamboo stalks on the left side. I'm making sure to not cover up my sentiment with that little A between the leaves there. And then my little sleepy panda will just cover up the bottom of my bamboo. And then of course I have this cute little guy. He's going to go at the top and he needs a little foam square to support his head because he is kind of going up off the top of that doily. And then, of course, last but not least, we love some glitter and sparkle to add to this card. So I'm using my stickles just to add some glitter to the hearts and the airplane on the Just a Note sentiment. And then to go with the gold foil that is on that Yeti paper background, I cut some of the smallest stars from the Hearts and Stars skinny tag die from some gold sparkle cardstock. And I have 5 of these little itty bitty stars and I'm just kind of sprinkling them around. They do get a little bit lost in that beautiful background, but when the light catches them, you do get those little bit of sparkle of the stars. And then here is my finished card with that really fun radial stamped background using the Stamp Wheel 2.0. I hope this has inspired you to take a look at the stamps in your collection and come up with some really fun and amazing backgrounds to create. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye!